Hello, everybody. This is Darren Redmond at the Darren Redmond Podcast, and I am so excited to talk to Larry Seidlich about the recent Ken Burns documentary on the American Revolution. I was waiting for this for a long, long time. And Larry knows Washington, D.C. like nobody's business. He's worked there for a very long time. And he's a student of history. He doesn't just read blurbs and he doesn't just speak talking points. He goes into depth. Some of the most compelling books I've ever read. Larry supplied for me vis-a-vis the book on George Washington. Larry, how are you now?
Great, great. Yeah, it's been a while since we spoke like this.
Yes.
Yeah, it's great.
And
I'm glad.
so walk me through, first of all, tell the audience a little bit about yourself before we kind of talk about the documentary.
Sure, sure. I mean, I'm just nobody special really. But I have lived. I'm like you said, somewhat of a history buff. Uh, like very much. I've always been interested in that. I majored in history. Like, I'm not a professional historian by any stretch, but like you do, I like to get my hands on any book or documentary that comes up on uh, topics that we're both interested in. We often sometimes will exchange messages about things we've
Mhm.
read, things we've seen. Of course, we are, related by marriage. People should know we
Yes.
are cousins of sorts.
No
So
sorts. We're family.
we're family. That's right. Yeah, it doesn't matter.
Yep.
And I've known you since I was like what, like 8 or something like that. So
Yes. Yep.
it's been a while.
It's been a while.
Um, and I went to uh, well, appropriately enough, I went to raised on Long Island, went to George
Mhm.
Washington University, appropriately enough. Stayed around afterwards, worked through some different careers. Didn't really. I've stayed with one for the past 12 years. I'm not going to get into my day job too
Right.
much. It's
Right.
not
No,
that
it's no,
exciting.
not important.
But I one of the jobs I loved that I had first out of college was I was once a U.S. Capitol tour guide for like 2 years, from March '05 to like fall of 2006, and I volunteered there for a couple of years after that, and that was like one of the best jobs I had. Like I loved it. Like it was not just it's not a tour guide like people think. You're very much you get to be an amateur historian. You get to shape your
Oh,
own
yeah.
narration, meet people from all over the place, sometimes members of Congress, sometimes the general public. And the only reason why I left that job at the time was it didn't pay all that much. Just my luck, though, right, a few years after I left, they unionized and now they have great starting salaries
They were
and all
like,
that.
whoa, Larry left. We got to change
Yeah,
things.
now
He
it's time.
left.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. But that was a job I really loved. And I
You
still.
know, this is no false praise when I tell you this. You were a big reason why I started podcasting. And I've been doing this now, I don't know, 5, 6 years and pretty well. Why? Because when social media really started to hit, you had K Street. You would talk a little bit about that, and you would kind of talk a little bit about, and you did it so wonderfully, just straight, here's what's going on, no leaning, or else you couldn't even read the
Oh,
leanings.
right, right. Yeah, I
Talk
did a
about
little.
that.
I did blog a little bit, like for a couple of years.
Mhm.
I had been between jobs. This is when blogging was a thing. No one's into that anymore. It's
Right.
podcasting now.
I used to
Um,
sell yellow pages. Nobody's into that
right,
anymore.
exactly. Yeah, right. So I actually did that. Just the reason why I did that for a few years was I haven't done it in years. Is because I was between jobs. As we all do, we kind of face. Sometimes we all, get um, the old pink slip for
Yeah.
downsizing reasons and whatnot. Everyone experiences that at one point or another. So it was a way for me to just keep my brain occupied, to keep up on writing and things like that. So that's why I did that back then, and I kind of fell away from that, but um, still, take an interest in all sorts of topics like that. Um, It'd probably be different if I was doing it today. It'd probably be different. I would probably do have maybe a different focus, but um, yeah, that's I did not know that that's what got you into podcasting, so I'm glad
No,
to.
it's true because I found it compelling and interesting. I like the rhythm of it, the syntax. And it was just like I try to do in the podcast, and that's just ask questions.
Yeah, yeah.
Doesn't matter what political affiliation, doesn't matter their beliefs or this or that. Everybody's voice matters. Hey, let's hear what you have to say. And
Mhm,
then, so yeah, that was one of the main reasons. And so I know we're both interested in documentaries, both interested in
mhm,
history, and I've done two documentaries, or at least tried, and the second one, I basically copied everything that Ken Burns did in terms of the style and the one I did about fentanyl. When
mhm,
did you really get into Ken Burns and kind of walk me through that? Because I know you've probably seen almost every one of his, if not all of them. I have as well. Though I haven't
mhm,
seen the one about radio, believe it or not. I started
mhm,
to. I haven't completed that one yet.
mhm. So yeah, I first saw I think the Civil War documentary years ago, which is kind of one of his famous ones, and then I watched a little bit of the Vietnam one and the World War II one, and I really liked that the way that they were structured and the way he told. And by the way, just now being where I live, you're going to hear a bunch of sirens. That's going to interrupt us. Uh, that's how it. That's
It
how it
is.
happens.
Yeah.
That's that's normal for here. I keep my window open because I like the cold air. But,
Mm,
we're going to hear
excellent.
that noise. So hopefully that passes soon. Uh,
Born and
so
raised
yeah,
in New York, I'm used to it.
yeah, exactly right. But so it's gonna go away in a second. It'll go in a second.
Cool.
There we go. So, so the Ken Burns documentaries, I watched them when they were on before when I was younger, um, and for a few years I kind of lost track of them. I didn't see them that much again. And so the time where I really rediscovered the Ken Burns documentaries was during the pandemic. Well, there's two things I discovered during that time. PBS, just in general, I forgot. Like I didn't realize until the pandemic when we were kind of locked in.
Hmm.
Uh, I watched a lot of it, and I realized, wow, it's really good. Like
Hmm.
people think it's like Sesame Street only. Sesame Street
Yeah,
hasn't been on PBS in years,
that's right.
but it's not about that. It's not just that. It's a lot of great documentaries,
Yep.
stuff you wouldn't be able to see otherwise.
Hmm.
And uh, and we get like three PBS channels down here because we get Maryland Public Television, we get something called WETA, which is more DC based, and then we get what Howard University Television, the PBS affiliate. So we get three. Sometimes they show all the same things on at the same time, like they'd all have the Ken Burns
Right.
documentary on at once. Other times they have local documentaries, just things you cannot see anywhere else. And the documentary that really got me back into Ken Burns was the one we both really like, which is the baseball one.
Oh, so good.
Yeah, brilliantly done. And you think like there's like three episodes, 2 hours each before they even get to the Babe Ruth era. So like
Right.
six hours of
Hmm.
history of baseball history prior to Babe Ruth, and 2 hours of that is pre 1900.
Yep.
Uh, and it really convinced me that baseball was the best sport. That's
Oh,
what that,
100%.
that Ken Burns'
100%.
documentary. Like you cannot make a documentary about any other sport the way
Nope.
he does that. Like
Nope.
it's impossible. The material is good. That's the thing. He's a great filmmaker, but it's also the content is so good because it's such an old sport going back to what the 18 earlier than the 1800s really.
Yep.
So I think that really was a great documentary. And then I kind of rewatched some other ones because when you get the PBS app, you can watch all of them whenever you want to.
I watch it literally every night. I'm
Yeah.
a
So that's
supporter of GBH over here. We
yeah.
get New Hampshire and Massachusetts, of course. But so
Mhm,
GBH is our local one here. Every month, comes right out of the
mhm.
bank account. Love it.
Yep. And it's one of the best things out there. People should subscribe to it. They should donate to them if they can,
Oh, 100%.
because it's they need it right now. And I think one of the things that Ken Burns had said was that PBS lets him take years to make these things.
Hmm.
This most recent American Revolution documentary took years, and there's no rush. He's not in a rush to make like a profit for the studio or something like that, like a lot of people are. So the fact that he takes his time with it, and the thing that I'm always interested in is think of all the things he had to leave out because you got to leave some, you got to make lots of cuts,
Oh,
obviously, right?
yep.
So it's like, and it's still like, hours and hours of footage, but there's probably stuff that he couldn't put in there just because of time.
We'll
Um,
talk a little bit about that, and not in a negative way. Just you can't, like you said, you can't put 10 pounds of potatoes into a 5 pound sack.
yeah,
Stuff is
yeah,
going to have to be left out.
yeah,
And that doesn't mean that it's bad. You just have to,
yeah.
you know.
And well, the thing is this: if you do it right, if you make a documentary like that right, um, even if you cut stuff, what you should do, what it should do is make you curious to dig up other things on your own, right?
Yep,
So it's like
yep.
you watch even a movie about a historical topic or a documentary like this is if it did it right and it did, you should be then have a whole list of things that you want to go research on your own. It makes you more curious.
A great example of that is what you just brought up in terms of the Civil War documentary, which it was just so compelling. Shelby Foote, uh, because of that documentary, I really got into Shelby Foote, and there's a group of people who like to kind of dismiss him because he got so, but he's just great. And I read all 3 volumes of his Civil War books. It's just unbelievable. And because I knew a lot about the Revolutionary War, and I was
Mhm.
like, I want to learn more about the Civil War. I want to really learn it. Um, and Shelby Foote got me there, and Shelby Foote got me there. Why? Because Ken Burns got me there. Like
Mhm.
that's the way it happens, right? You go down this rabbit
Right.
hole, you go down this rabbit hole.
Mhm.
So let's start talking about the American Revolutionary War documentary by Ken Burns. We'll start off with a little appetizer in terms of what were you expecting going in, and did you receive that? And then we'll go into the deeper water.
Sure. I was expecting Peter Coyote to be the narrator, which he was. Great
Yeah.
narrator,
Oh,
great
it's so
voice,
good.
great guy. That's perfect. Not disappointed there. Um, I was wondering how he was going to take one of the challenges he had is he had to take material where there's no like still photos of any of the people. The Civil War
Hmm.
documentary, there was still photos of the
Yeah.
people and events. American Revolution doesn't have that. You got paintings, still photos, but he did paintings, I should say. He took paintings, drawings.
Hmm.
Um, he took like shots of landscape
Yep.
that obviously were not filmed today, but could resemble early colonial America, which was very, very sparsely populated. And the soundtrack, he always finds the right soundtrack for it too.
Oh, he does. And
Really,
the
really,
music and the soundtrack is so important
it is.
because you
It really is.
immerse. Yep.
It does. Again, bring it in. So I think, and I also expected to, because I'd seen some interviews uh, where he had talked about it, the last few months, and he said we're going to have voices of people that you're not familiar with, and that's what I really liked the most. We heard from the common people of all sides, people we
Hmm.
never heard of before. It's one thing for like, to hear about like what Thomas Jefferson said and John Adams. We're mostly familiar with that stuff. But hearing it from the voices of people you never heard of before, that was really what was my favorite part of it.
Oh, that's excellent.
Yeah.
So let's kind of unpack what you thought about the American Revolution. What could you say you learned from this? What
Mm.
surprised you and why?
So he presented this. He really gave us perspectives that we hadn't heard of before. This is not like the fifth grade version that we heard. Um, One of the first thing that you realize is how divided people were. People's motivations for participating in the Revolution on both sides were all over the map. Um, pe- People had some people were into the high ideals, some people were very much not. Like he makes no bones about the fact that for a lot of people, they wanted that land west of the Appalachian
Oh,
Mountains,
yeah. George
right? Which
Washington
was
amongst them.
right, exactly. Yeah. And the funny thing is, that start the French and Indian War is really where the American Revolution really starts, right, with the French and Indian War, which incidentally enough started by George Washington by
Yes,
accident.
because he killed somebody.
Right, exactly, by accident.
Yeah.
Signed that confession in French that was in French.
Yep.
Uh, and the interesting thing is, like living in the DC area here, we don't have as much Revolutionary War history as you would think. We have some, but really the New York City area is really that's like the real, and the New Jersey to some extent.
Yep.
That is really like that's really the mother lode of American Revolutionary history. Um, but down here, one of the things we have is in Alexandria, which is not far from where George Washington lived. It's only like, well, 20 minutes drive today from Alexandria, but um, back then, who knows? Uh, we have a house where the Braddock expedition was launched from,
Mhm.
which was the British General Braddock went out to
Yep.
the frontier, which was like at the time was hard to believe, like Pittsburgh was like the frontier at the time.
Yeah, yeah. But it
It's
was.
about as far as we can go. And George Washington was made his bones on that expedition. Um, and so that we do have a little bit of that history around here. Um, the thing about it was, he gets into the Native American part of it where, like the colonists want that land. There's people there. They're not happy about it. The British, they put restrictions on westward expansion, and
Mhm.
that's one of the that's not something people realize is one of the main drivers of the anger against the British government. Um, Obviously, like the British weren't doing it for noble reasons. Like they, as you know, like the British Empire, if you know history, they have no problem taking lands from
No,
people.
no.
They were like experts at it.
One of the
Uh,
reasons they lost the Revolutionary War was because they
yeah,
were battle all over the world they
everywhere
were
else,
fighting.
right? Exactly. So it was like there wasn't noble intentions. They weren't trying to protect Indian lands necessarily, but uh, they were more worried about overstretching themselves and having to protect that land. Um, and you think of it, you know, there's that aspect of it. Ken Burns also showed us that a lot of folks, the slavery issue is there.
Oh yeah.
Slavery was legal in all the colonies at the time,
Yep.
um, and for some people, the British. When we talk about people fighting for freedom, it's an interesting thing because that can mean so many different things. Uh, there were some people who believed they were fighting for freedom that were fighting on the other side, on the British side.
Yeah.
Because if you were a slave and you escaped to the British lines, they promised you your freedom. So you were fighting
Yes.
for your freedom if you were them.
But then, as
Uh,
Ken Burns showed in the documentary as well, if you didn't fight, they sold you for
yeah,
profit.
right, right. So it's like there's a lot of complexity in it,
Yep.
and the fact that you think about today, if you ask people why they like, if you do a focus group today, and you ask people why they voted a certain way, or this or that, they'll give you all kinds of reasons. Some of them won't even make any sense, but they'll all be for different reasons. And I think if you
Mhm.
did a focus group of people at the time, you ask them why they supported the British government, why they supported the independence, they give you all kinds of reasons that maybe weren't necessarily coherent.
Right.
Like they can be all over the map, but everyone had different reasons. The fact that um, it was really the first civil war, that was something that the documentary really emphasized.
Mhm.
Except in this case, the loyalists and the patriots are all mixed together, and then there's people in between.
Right.
So it's that and the violence between people that live next to each other. We like to think of the American Revolution as like this very dignified thing where they wore
Oh
like
no. Oh no. It was,
fancy coats and drums and all that stuff, and it was ugly actually in real life.
yeah. You know, and thank goodness for books like Plum Martin. He wrote a book about later in his life about what it was like being a Revolutionary War and, some of the other things. And I like when the truth comes out. You know,
Hmm.
um, it's just, it's important because like what really happened. And maybe you and I are a little different. No, I say that with no hubris than others because they want to say, see, was a bad person, or this person is appreciated. No, let's just find out, right? I'm a
Hmm.
big
Yeah,
believer that heat and light are the best transparency. Um,
yeah.
most
That's
people,
like,
go ahead.
and
I'm
we're
sorry.
grown up. I think we're all people should be mature enough to realize that you're going to get the good, the bad, and the ugly when you watch something
Yeah.
like this.
Oh,
There's,
absolutely. I mean, there were,
And
it
here,
was, it was a civil war,
mhm,
and it was a civil war mixed with a revolutionary war, mixed with land grab, mixed with landowners, mixed with freedom, but only freedom for certain people. And
mhm,
and so here's the one thing that I learned that I did not know, and it gave me a sleepless night, and I say that with no embellishment. Because, like I said, I think I know pretty much about the Revolutionary War. The other History Channel put together a really good documentary as well, and we'll talk a little bit about that. Because did you notice that the History Channel's documentary and Ken Burns, a few of the experts who spoke were the same. They
mhm,
were the
mhm,
same people, which is kind of cool in a way. And then they're like, "Oh, I know what he's going to say," and they said it, him and her. Um, but I'm losing my train of thought here, but
You were saying what the thing you learned that you didn't
yeah,
know.
the thing that I learned most was that there was I forget the Native American's name. He signed allegiance to the Patriot cause. He was made a general or something, and they promised him that after the war they would make a state. I never heard that before.
Mhm,
Now, I knew that a lot of what we had in the Declaration of Independence and even Articles of Confederation was from the Native American um, framework, because I'm a big Franklin guy.
mhm,
And he spoke about that. But then this guy was killed. They don't know how. I wish Ken Burns would have gave that a little bit
mhm.
more because he didn't say who did it. You just
Right,
kind of
right.
implied.
Mhm.
Um, I think it just
And that's one of those things.
we have a really horrible history of s- not caring about contracts and just
Right, right.
it's terrible.
Yeah, yeah. And I think that that's something that's an issue that I think you can, one of those things that, you can like start to chase down, look for
I
other
will.
sources on it to see what happened. Yeah.
Yeah, I will
Uh,
because that would did you know that? I didn't. That surprised
yeah, I
me.
didn't hear, yeah, I wasn't aware of that particular person. And there were a lot of people that, I didn't know about before this. I would have also, one of the ones I really would have liked, if you can get, if there's any books on them, I want to try to find the Rhode Island regiment that was made up of African Americans.
Oh yeah. Yep.
Because obviously you had some that fought for the British because they believed that's where they were going to get their freedom.
Right.
But you had African Americans that fought for the Continentals.
Oh yeah, 100%.
So
Yes.
I would like to know. I would love to interview someone if we could find. It would be great if we could actually interview someone that was there, obviously, but we can't. But if we can find first person sources,
Oh,
any
100%.
journals,
Yeah, I would love that.
yeah, yeah, I
And
would
by
love to
the
see
way,
what they thought they were fighting for.
how about free black men who are free, who fought
Hmm.
for us? We don't even talk
Yeah,
about that.
yeah,
I say
yeah,
us for the American side.
right.
Um, it was very interesting. Here's where, just for a matter of time, I felt like, again, it had to be left on the table.
Hmm.
If you watch the TV series Turn, it fictionalized a lot of the spies that George
Right.
Washington used. But there are other documentaries and books that I read. There were a lot of, I say a lot, there were more than a few. How about that? Generals and people in Washington's army who were really playing both sides.
Hmm.
They
Yeah,
were, they would not good people, and they
yeah.
would just they were like, here's the side I'm on now. Oh, looks like they're gonna win, and they played both
Hmm.
sides against the middle. Um,
Sure.
and That
Because
was
who's
interesting, and most people don't talk about that.
right, right, and you've got the ultimate example that they talk about is Benedict Arnold's, right? Who
Right.
people don't realize he was the best general
Oh,
that the Americans
by
had.
far,
Like,
by
that's
far.
why, like, if he was a nobody or he was just like incompetent, like his betrayal wouldn't mean anything. Uh, but the fact that he was probably the best that we had was the reason why his betrayal was stung so badly. Um, and he did note, I don't know, we don't know if he meant it or not, but the documentary did point out that he wrote that he had originally joined the cause of the colonists of the Continentals because he there were legitimate grievances against the British government, but he felt independence was too far.
Right.
Uh, Whether he meant that or not, but I think there were probably people who did feel that way at the time because
Yeah.
when you think this was 8 years or more, it's really more than 8 years. But the Revolutionary War is like one part of the revolution, right? It starts before then. There are people that probably had gripes against the British government, but maybe said, "Oh, I don't want to go that far. I don't want to go as far as independence." And
Yes.
there,
Well,
and
that's
there,
the whole thing.
yeah, and there were people who maybe started the other way. That after it pointed out that some people joined the Continental Army after the British came through and like raided their village and pillaged everything,
Right.
which they all did at the time. But for those people that joined, they were like they weren't thinking necessarily about independence at the beginning, but then they were after that. They joined
Right.
up to fight the British after that. So it's people's motivations are all over the place as far as and people change their minds. People
Oh,
change their
yeah.
minds today.
People went back and forth. The regular
Uh,
soldiers went back and forth.
yeah,
They would
we change our
leave.
minds today. We change
Oh,
if you. Oh, sorry, I'm interrupting you.
no, go ahead. No.
No, but I was gonna if we like talked about our opinions 10 years ago, they'd be different than they are now.
Oh, very much so.
Yeah, well, people back then were the same way, right? We forget that a lot that they can change
Oh,
their minds. They did.
absolutely. Absolutely. Um, so I know my answer to this question. Because I'm asking you this because I know you're a student of this. Who do you think they gave a little short shift to, or you would have liked to see them talk about it even more?
Hmm. So this would be a character that probably that we know of. Uh, I would have liked to have seen a little bit more in Benjamin Rush, to tell you the
Oh,
truth,
very good. Yeah.
because he was to me one of the most interesting of those characters at the time. Um,
He did everything by a book. I mean, he just read how to do what he
yeah,
did.
yeah. He was very ahead of his time in a lot of ways.
Yes.
Um, and also there was another guy that Joseph, I think is Joseph Wilson from Pennsylvania original. Well, he mostly lived in Pennsylvania. Uh, Fascinating guy in both the Revolution and then later in the Constitutional Convention.
Mhm.
Uh, we should talk about him later, but yeah, Benjamin Rush was a fascinating guy that I would have liked to see a little bit more on because was just so
Yeah,
ahead of
he went
ahead
on
of his
to
time.
being um, part of Washington's first cabinet, and he
Yep,
was in charge of the whole army once Washington left. And he
yep,
was the one who brought the heavy armor from Fort
yeah,
Tuckaroga. And
yeah.
so my guy, and they talked about him a little bit, was really two. Who really won the war, in my opinion. And that's taking nothing away from Washington, the overall everything else.
Mhm.
And that was Nathaniel Greene
Yeah.
And Daniel Morgan.
Hmm.
Um, Daniel Morgan makes that great strategy of he figured out how to use the militia,
Hmm.
at Cowpens. And,
Right.
he knew that Tarleton was going to go full bore. I would have liked for Ken Burns to talk a little bit more about that, you
Hmm.
know, um, and the fact that Daniel Morgan was up see, to me, the top three, taking Washington out of it for a second, were Benedict Arnold, Nathaniel Greene, and Daniel Morgan. Daniel
Hmm.
Morgan, no, we're putting people in trees and we're going to snipe the heck out of you. And,
Hmm.
or he did the thing where the militia would fire two shots and run, and Charlington and the boys were going after them with the horses, and there they are. They try to
Yep.
kind of play off of that in the movie The Patriot. Um, but, right after Waxhaws because of what Charlington did there. Um,
Hmm.
but I would like to see a little bit more on Nathaniel Greene. And do you know what happened to Nathaniel Greene after the war?
Can't exactly remember actually.
So it's very sad. He was a Quaker from Connecticut, and then he just rose through the ranks. He disavowed his Quaker lifestyle, and he felt there was a need. And he was given a big plot of land in either North Carolina or Georgia. I'm not sure. And he died of heat stroke um,
Hmm.
even before Washington became president. He was
Yeah.
out there working the fields and he died of heat stroke. Horrible.
Yeah.
Um,
If they survive all the other things you
oh
survived,
yeah, I know.
a lot of irony in that.
It's like the old odd couple joke where
Hmm.
Somebody quit cigarettes, right?
Hmm. Yeah, yeah, and
To
they,
save
yeah,
his life. He gets hit
right,
by a
yeah,
bus.
right, yeah.
But and then with Daniel Morgan, he was part of the Whiskey Rebellion and all that other stuff,
Mhm.
but that came later. I would have liked to see a little bit more on that, but that doesn't mean that I didn't love it. I absolutely will, because like you said, you can't fit it
Mhm.
all in.
Yeah, it's really hard to do, especially I think he wanted to introduce a lot of new stuff to us, so I think that was
And I think he did. Like I
yeah.
said, for example, I had no idea about they were going to make and they promised a state.
Hmm.
Shocking they
Yeah.
didn't. We didn't come through with that.
Hmm.
Um, what else would you like to add on anything of this?
Oh, lots. I think of lots
Please.
of things actually. So, like, let's ask a
No,
question.
you go ahead.
Well, and you can answer this too. What if the British government, what if the British gave the colonists what they had wanted at the beginning? So, say they gave them, representation in Parliament, or they said, okay, your legislatures can they can tax you directly. We don't not going to involve us. What
So
happens? Do we still end up independent later on?
I think that there's still some people who wanted there to be independence regardless. They didn't want to accept anything. But I think if they would have relented early, calmer voices would have prevailed. Um, and people seem to forget we had a war of 1812.
Right.
We had a redo. Um, I think there was a couple of things. I think emotions without thought get you in trouble all the time. And I think
Mhm.
the way they boxed in Boston and boxed
Mhm.
in Massachusetts and took away those rights,
Mhm.
when you had people who knew how to play the populace and,
Yeah.
Samuel Adams and they
Mhm.
did all that, and this can happen to you, right? Fear of loss.
Yeah. Yeah.
Um,
Yeah.
and also, it happened in Boston, and it happened in the South. They put
Mhm.
up if you don't swear allegiance, you're an enemy. Well,
Mhm.
don't do that either. And but I think if they would have, cooler heads would have prevailed. I think
Mhm.
people like Ben Franklin, people like you mentioned Benedict Arnold, people like we would have because they would have just left us alone. But this would have happened anyway because
Mhm.
we were going to move west one way or another. I think it
Yeah.
would have paused it, wouldn't have stopped it.
Right. 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 And I think that we would have been probably. I think the same thing. So if they had given them what they'd wanted back then, and we didn't have an American Revolution as we know it, I think we probably end up like kind of how Canada and Australia are, where we're
Right.
independent eventually. They're still like that they share they
Hmm.
still have the monarch in
Right.
those countries, but they're basically independent. So I think partially we would have ended up that way. It's interesting to think though. So France buys what we now call the Louisiana Territory, gets it back
Mhm.
from Spain in 1800. Um, and say the colonies are still controlled by the British, are still basically part of the British Empire. I don't think Napoleon sells the Louisiana Territory to the British.
No, never, never,
Yeah, I highly doubt it.
never. And that brings up another thing. The war really doesn't end after Yorktown. I mean,
Right.
there's no real battles, just skirmishes.
Mhm.
But how unpack this for a minute? I know we're running out of time a little bit, but and I want to hear the other stuff that you have. But how does Benjamin Franklin, John Adams, and I forget who's with them during the meetings with France and with England, and come with France got nothing.
Yeah, yeah.
France was booted out. I mean,
Well, they
and
got revenge. They got revenge for the 7 years war, for the French and Indian War, you could say.
right, but they're out of all that money. And
Mhm.
then after that, Ben Franklin goes, "Oh, we're sorry, we didn't." And Ben Franklin gets more money out of them.
Yeah,
Amazing.
yeah.
They got no
So,
territories. They got
right.
no assurances. They got no fishing rights. I mean,
Hmm.
it was crazy.
Hmm.
And then really like a couple of the moderates in England said, let America, be free. And they'll
Right.
still trade with us. I mean, and that's
Hmm.
what happened. They're still
Right.
in a lot of ways our mother country. right? I mean,
Yeah.
you think about it.
Mhm.
So, yeah,
Yeah, and I think that yeah, that's an interesting point. The a lot of people don't realize that uh, the British at the time, it wasn't an absolute monarchy. Like there's always the
nope,
talk of, obviously the Declaration of Independence references the king and people, railed against the king. How many people do you think know who Lord North was?
right.
Virtually
Including you and
nobody.
me, nobody.
Right, exactly. Yeah, it's like
I
very. I
mean,
mean, the fact is, it was actually not really the king wasn't really the guy who
nope,
was hardcore about making coming down on the colonists. It was really the British Parliament doing it
yep,
all.
yep,
And the king ultimately did say, "We're not going to give him independence." He stuck, dug his heels in at one point. But the reason why it ultimately changes is because the Parliament changes. The
yep,
people in Parliament who wanted you basically let the Americans go,
yep.
they gained more seats,
Yeah, that's it.
and
I mean,
his hand was
really,
forced. Yeah. And from what I've heard, the way it all happened was the British ambassador to France literally just walked down to the hotel that Ben Franklin was at to start negotiations. He just went and found him.
well,
No
isn't that the
diplomatic
way?
people.
And has anything really changed? It still happens a
Well, a
lot of
little
times
bit.
that way, you know,
Well, there's
but
more like there's like a phone call now, and maybe you have
yes,
somebody else reach
right.
out. But yeah,
Or a
but
Zoom
yeah,
call.
right, exactly. Yeah, but yeah, that is, and well, I'll say with the French also. This you could argue, the French Revolution ultimately happens because it's sort of inspired in some ways by our revolution. Obviously, went a little sideways,
Oh, yeah,
uh, to say the least. But you think Lafayette was, was there for that, and
right.
famously Thomas Paine, is in France during the time he writes *The Rights of Man*,
That's right.
defending the French Revolution from Edmund Burke.
Yeah,
Uh,
yes.
so it's those things are tied together.
And basically, he starts to chastise George Washington
Yeah.
and for being, sort of a king kind of person. And yeah, he. That's why they don't think. Unfortunately, he's not. There's no statues to him. Let's put it that way.
Right.
He
Yeah.
does.
Yeah.
He's not held in that reverence.
Hmm.
So here's the question that I have for you that you probably heard a million times from people answer this. So I'm going to ask you: if you found a time machine and you can go back in time and you can sit and have a nice, peaceful lunch and dinner with any of the founding fathers or any of the generals or people who were, uh, in the colonies, who would you want to and why? Who would you want to meet?
Oh gosh, there's a lot of those. Gosh, if I'm only picking one though, uh, I might, I might ask. Gosh, this is hard because there's so many you could pick.
Sure.
Well, let's go with now. Off the top of my head, I might go with Adams because we were talking about him, or
Hmm.
well, we before we had this call, we were talking a
Right.
little bit about him.
He's so interesting and so he's amazing.
Yeah, yeah, really, he is. I loved but by the way, loved the series on him on HBO where Paul Giamatti plays him,
Oh
and
yeah. And Paul
oh,
Giamatti voices him
right.
here.
Voices him in this. Yeah, that was great voice casting on Ken Burns' part. Um, I think I probably wouldn't have liked him personally.
No.
That's
A
and
lot
that's
of
why
people
like
did it.
yeah, a lot of the people that we're talking about, you know, George Washington, even he was probably a very difficult guy to deal with.
Oh yeah.
Adams was probably very difficult. Ben Franklin probably a fun guy.
Right.
Um, but the thing is, that's the thing. Many were probably not likable if you knew them in person, but um, you don't have to like them. You can still
No.
appreciate what things they accomplished. But yeah, Adams is the guy that's kind of interested in just because I really like the series. I'd probably think of someone else too if I have the time. But
And when
um,
I have you back on it, because I would love to unpack some more of this stuff, not so much just about Ken Burns' documentary, but history in general. You know,
mhm.
John Adams was done dirty by Jefferson,
Yeah, yeah,
in that election.
yeah,
But
yeah. Nasty.
I'm really glad though that they made up later in life. you know?
Yeah, yeah,
And how
yeah. That was.
crazy, how many, are you talking about how many people know this? How crazy is it that on the 50th anniversary of,
Yep.
that's crazy.
2 hours apart, right?
Yep.
Something like that. Yeah,
Yeah. But what are the odds, you know?
yeah.
And then, so my answer will probably be Ben Franklin, just
Mhm.
because. And you look, none of these guys were perfect, right? We didn't even start
Yeah.
talking about George Washington and
Hmm.
um, but Ben, I mean, he left his wife for years. You know,
Hmm.
his son was governor of New Jersey, pledged allegiance to the king. Um,
Right.
they had him arrested, and he ends
Yeah.
up basically being a terrorist, for lack of
Yeah.
a better term. And Ben never
Hmm.
talked to him, took his son
Yep.
from him, you know, legally,
Hmm.
but took his son from him. And, you know, he just, so many inventions and music, and what an interesting guy.
Yeah. Yeah. And I think that's why I think that he's a good guy to talk to, just because of the fact that he had so many interests. Like scientific ones. I don't know if you heard this. This is like a little dark, but have you ever heard about the house that he lived in England? Was It was a hobby back then to basically perform autopsies on corpses,
Hmm.
for just to learn about anatomy,
Right, yeah,
obviously.
just look around, poke
Yeah,
around.
and Ben Franklin was apparently a guy that was one of his hobbies when he lived in
Yeah.
England. The house he lived in had some basically buried in the backyard. Uh,
Wow.
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. It's a
Uh,
wild story. I
yeah,
would like to ask him, like, hey, what was the deal? Like, what were you
yeah.
doing there?
Well,
Yeah.
look, I mean, why?
Yeah, yeah. But I think he was probably just curious about, like a lot of people, his way of studying science in a very like amateur way.
Right. Yeah. I
But,
mean, and that whole emerging science and
mhm.
this,
Yeah,
and it still freaks me out that Mozart and Franklin lived at the same time.
yeah, yeah.
You know, that's so freaky to me. Like most people don't think
Hmm.
that, you
Hmm.
know. But Larry, it was such a great time having you here today, man. It was. Is there anything else you want to share before I go? Come on, I know you got
Sure.
probably got some
Well,
stuff there. Let's do it.
yeah. Oh, lots of but probably not a ton that we can cover in this whole time. But
Let's go.
I I think that um, one of the things I was interested in also was how some of the states, when they formed their own constitutions,
Mhm.
took it even further than the Declaration of Independence, and
Yep.
further than most people. Like Pennsylvania was the option that they was the one they picked, where they didn't just give voting rights to people who had property; they gave it to uh, men who paid. It was basically for men, not, and it was, but that was still further than
Oh yeah.
others had gone.
Yep.
And they pointed out that John Adams was like appalled by that
Yes.
you would extend the vote to people that don't have property. Um, so it was interesting that some states took it further than
That's a good point. I forgot
some
all
people
about
wanted
that.
to do.
You're right.
Yeah, yeah. So I think you do have some people that push that were very idealistic, that really took a chance um, to go basically progress even further than others wanted to. Um, I was going to ask a question. We may
No,
be
go.
running
We
out of
got
time.
time. Go. Tell me. No, we got
Yeah.
time.
So one of the questions I was going to ask was, and this seems like such an obvious thing now, but it's an interesting thing to consider. If you were living at the time, are you a loyalist, or are you a patriot, or are you indifferent? Because you can answer that question easily now, but how do you really know?
You don't.
Yeah,
How are you doing economically? What kind of,
yeah, yeah.
profession do you have? You know,
Hmm.
all of those things.
Yeah,
You have to wait and see. I mean,
yeah.
where do
There's
you
no way to
live?
know, really. Yeah,
Like for
right.
example, if you lived in and around Boston, you
Yeah,
know that, you're going to literally be tarred and feathered unless you go one
yeah.
way. You know, you
Well, it's
live,
also, and if you lived in Boston, like the British came down hard on you, like as a
yes,
result of just
which
because
was
some
such
people.
a bad decision.
Right. Well, think about this. Boston Tea Party, right, is
Yep.
basically an act of rioting and looting
Yeah.
of the English East India Company. Not everyone that was unsatisfied, that not everyone that opposed the taxes on tea and other things was for that. Some
Nope.
people thought it hurt the cause, and because of what some people did, the British come down on all of you.
Well, no,
So
exactly right. And there wasn't a document signed to say, let's go do
yeah,
this. It was just
yeah,
a group of, one person's freedom fighter is somebody else's
hmm
terrorist. I
yeah,
mean, let's, put on a bad imitation of Native Americans. And do you know why they were able to? I mean, you know why they were able to do
hmm
that, right?
Well, I saw Ken Burns talk about that very thing. He said it was because they wanted to show that they were basically that we're not basically they were dressing up saying we're native to this continent. Yeah.
Right.
A lot of people believed for a long time, and there's a lot of things we're taught historically that spread word of mouth that don't make any sense, and we kind of know
Mhm.
they don't make sense. And
Right.
one of them is this idea that that they dressed up as Native Americans to fool the British into thinking Native Americans did it. But Ken Burns pointed out no one would have believed that would have happened. No one would have
Right.
believed that. That
Well,
wouldn't
here's
make
some.
that would,
Well, here's something else that Ken Burns didn't bring up, but he kind of implied it, which is great. The British soldiers wouldn't have believed it because there were
Mhm.
none. That's why they were
Right,
able to get on the ships because
right,
the king pulled, England pulled their troops out of there when we
hmm
showed the heavy armory that we had, and they
hmm
left. I mean,
yeah,
if I'm getting my timelines
yeah,
right. No, that was before, but still, there was
right, right,
nobody there to stop them. Yeah,
right,
I
right.
just flip-flopped in time because Tea
hmm
Party was before. But
yeah,
there was nobody there to stop them.
yeah,
And
yeah,
because of all the stuff that happened previous, they were like hands off.
hmm
And they came in and that's what they did. Um, yeah, no. So where would you been? Would you been a loyalist or
I guess saying what you were saying, like if I lived in Boston and the British were coming down on me and did collectively punished us all because of
yeah,
I might and if I was like a person who's not a it depends on if you're just a regular common person back then and the British come down on all of us, I'm
yeah,
angry about it. If the British come through my town and they pillage everything, I'm not happy about that.
right.
If the Americans do it, if the colonists do it, I might you might go the other way. Who knows? And Yeah, you really don't know until you're there. It's everyone had their reasons, and some people. You think about today, like some people we talked about, the elections today, voting today. When we do focus groups of people, why they voted a certain way. Some
Mhm.
are very idealistic. They believe in a certain candidate's um, ideals. They really believe in it, and they're true believers. Some people vote a certain way because they work in an industry or they own a company that candidate is better for. So
Right.
strictly money, material things.
Mhm.
Some people behave the same way back then.
Oh, of
So
course.
yeah, so yeah, I would say the same thing as you said. Hard to know, depending on who you are and where you live. It really would have affected things.
Oh, oh, no doubt.
Mhm.
So one other thing I would have liked for Ken Burns to bring up, and again, it's because he just limited time,
Mhm.
was for as much as he went into George Washington,
Mhm.
the eyeglass situation in New Rochelle,
Yeah,
in
right.
Newport
Newburgh.
rather.
Yeah, yeah, Newburgh. Yeah.
Newburgh, yeah, I'll get
I,
there.
I have I have like a just a relative that I think lives up there now. Yeah.
Tell For those who don't know, tell that story because that's an amazing
Yeah.
story. How
So
close we came to having
yeah, dictatorship more or less.
yeah,
Yeah. So I though correct me if I'm telling it wrong, but uh the Continental troops that are with this is after Yorktown,
hmm
but the war is not officially ended.
right,
Um so after that, George Washington's up there in Newburgh with his troops. They want to mutiny and march on Congress because they haven't
yeah,
been paid. He steps up in front of them all to give a speech. He takes his eyeglasses out, says something along the lines of, my eyesight has gone bad since I've been, you know, in this war or something along the. I probably got that. I'm not going to quote
no, you're
directly, but
absolutely right. He gave a speech and
paraphrasing.
then
Yeah,
it was flat, and then
yeah,
he took his eyeglasses. Yep,
and the people there were really just overcome, from what I understand, and
and
decided
that
they were
really
not.
happened. That's not a
Yeah,
fable. That
yeah.
really happened, and
Yeah. And you think about also, we were talking about how the French Revolution went sideways. You had Napoleon emerge out of that. Uh, George Washington, for all, for all the faults that he had, he's decidedly not that. He decides to march down to Congress, hand in his resignation,
Yep.
creating that tradition of the military being uh, subservient to the civilian government, in this
Yep.
case, the actual Congress, and then, of course, quits after 2 terms. Um,
It's
so that's
amazing.
yeah. So that in itself is those are that situation you were talking about in Newburgh. Things could have really gone sideways there.
Right. Yeah. I
You could.
mean, it was real close.
Hmm.
And it's just that's why he is such a complex individual.
Hmm.
That
Yeah.
he just gave it all up, but
Yeah.
yet he wouldn't give up his slaves until he
Right.
died.
So like that. Yeah.
Um,
Yeah.
and how
That
about
was
the?
a.
Go
Okay.
ahead. You
No, you go
speak,
ahead.
please.
No,
No,
no, you're. I
your
was
show.
curious.
This I'm here every week. You're not. Go
Okay,
speak.
all right, all right. So, well, I was going to ask you what you thought of that book. If you got to the book I gave you about that, did you get to that at any point?
Oh no, I read the whole thing. It
Did you?
made me
Yeah,
want to learn more. I mean, without
yeah,
sounding like a shill, but
yeah,
it
yeah,
made me want to learn more.
yeah.
Why do you think his wife burnt all their letters?
Yeah, I don't know. I don't know. That I'm not sure. Uh, we'd
All
love
right.
to dig into that too.
All right, and we're going to go down a rabbit hole, right?
Mhm.
As we end here now. Um, Again, it's not mythology about
Mhm.
George Washington having horses shot out from under him, bullet
Mhm.
holes in his clothes, and he was never hit.
Mhm.
And thus, like Ken Burns kind of implies, we would have not won the war without him.
Mhm.
Let's talk about Ken Burns's masterpiece, the Civil War documentary.
Mhm.
Stonewall Jackson, who is just ripping apart the Unions, you know,
Mhm.
he's killed by his own troops accidentally.
Yeah. Mhm.
And ever since then, and with the emergence of Grant, wow, how history could have changed.
Mhm.
Do I think the Union still would have won? Absolutely, but it would have been a lot harder.
Right. Right.
But that's war, right?
Mhm.
That's war. And he didn't die of his gunshots, right? He died of
Yeah.
pneumonia while he
Yeah.
was getting better.
Whatever happened. Yeah. Yeah.
Crazy. So, what last
Mhm.
thought do you have for us?
So I just the last thing I would say,
Yes,
um, since we're running out of time and I don't want to get too deep on something, I will give folks some things they should check out
please
as
do.
far as historical sites
Mhm.
people should visit. I'm going to name one up in New York. Right there's Franz. Well, two things up. New York City has a ton of history on this stuff, better than down here. But Franz's Tavern, check it out if you're there. You can actually go like drink there and have dinner there if you want to.
Oh,
It's
that's
where
nice.
George Washington had his last banquet with his officers before he went back to Virginia. Um,
Oh, that's
so that's a
great.
place to check out. Check out Alexander Hamilton's grave is in the graveyard of Trinity Church.
Mhm.
People should go look at that. You can go visit it. Leave a $10 bill, I guess. Uh, and the other thing also Bowling Green Park in Lower Manhattan once had a statue of King George of the King that was taken down, and there's
Mhm.
remnants of it still behind supposedly. Uh,
Really?
yeah, you'd have to people would have to Google that a little further just
Right.
to figure out what exactly that was, but the remnants of that statue are apparently still there. Um, and down here in the Washington D.C. area, something that people should definitely check out. It's a very off the beaten path. Well, it's not totally off the beaten path, but no one thinks of it. We have a cemetery it's in Alexandria, Virginia, in Old Town Alexandria. So it's not in Washington D.C., but
Mhm.
about 20 minutes south of here in Old Town Alexandria. If you Google Old Presbyterian Meeting House, okay, so Google Old Presbyterian Meeting House. Look it
Mhm.
up on Google Maps. I don't know the exact cross streets, but people should be able to figure stuff out for themselves there. If you have Google Maps, you should be able to figure this out. Go to the Old Presbyterian Meeting House, and there's like a little side entrance where there's a graveyard in the back, very small, like smaller than most people's backyards. And it's
Right.
got graves from the American Revolution. It has the grave of the unknown American Revolutionary soldier.
Wow.
There's a grave called the Unknown.
Wow.
Yeah, it's like the think of the Tomb of the Unknown Arlington, but
Mhm,
they've got a
mhm.
version for the American Revolution in that graveyard. And it's a graveyard that you cannot see from the street. Nobody knows people who are local have no idea it's there a lot of times.
Right.
And there's also the guy who was the Surgeon General of the Continental Army is also buried there. So those
Oh,
are sites people should check out.
I'm gonna go do that. I mean, I
Well,
did not know that. I
yeah.
would
Well,
love that.
if you make your way down here, we're going to go on a long tour of a lot of things.
I would love that. Now, I gotta ask
Mm.
one Civil War thing since you live down there.
Yep.
Uh, how
Oh, I think.
close the wilderness, where there were two full battles,
Mhm.
uh, to
Oh,
DC?
where the Battle of the
How
Wilderness was.
close was the wilderness? Yes, compared to, DC. Like, how
Uh,
close
you,
is that?
that's a good question. I have to look. That's one thing I'm going to have to look up. I don't exactly know the answer to that,
Mm.
but I can tell you how close Manassas is a suburb where the first battle was fought.
Right.
Is a suburb of DC.
Yes.
Basically, 35, 40 minutes, depending on traffic. And we
They
do
get real
have in DC.
close.
They're very close. They are very close. And also, we have remnants of the old Civil War forts that protected the city of Washington. They're parks now, but you can
Mhm.
still go today. And I, on my, so- you know, I'll send you some pictures of it when I get a chance. You can go to the parks where these forts were and see like the
Mhm.
olds, like where they placed the artillery.
Right.
The fort where President Lincoln came under fire is in Northwest DC.
Mhm.
Park is there. There's a memorial to it. He's the only president to come under fire as president. So
Right.
that's where it happened. Um, there's a cemetery it's called the Battle of Fort Stevens. People can look that up. Battle of Fort Stevens. There's a cemetery nearby off a main road.
Mhm.
Has the guys who died in the Battle of Fort Stevens are buried there. Some from New York, some from Massachusetts, Irish born, German born in some cases. So
Whoa.
those are some sites people should check out too.
People, this is why we had Larry on, and we're going to have Larry Seidlich on again. Larry, thank you so much for spending some
Thank you.
time with us today.
Thank you.
Be well.
Absolutely.
Love it.
You too. You too.
Take care.
Well, thank you. You too.